What's up, everybody? Aaron Bennett here, coming to you from a very noisy Starbucks. I want to talk to you about what happened with Celsius in court 2 days ago, and also what Simon Dixon thinks is the necessary way to get out of this mess. So I'm going to start out by going over a Twitter Spaces update from Plan C, and I'm going to talk about what they said, including what David Adler said about Ponzi schemes, very, very important. And then I'm going to go over what Simon Dixon said regarding what needs to happen right now. So I hope to make this video short. I'm just going to cover everything important for you, and let me get to the recap of this Twitter Spaces. So to start out, David Adler was not happy how everyone talked about this being a Ponzi so much. He said, if it's a Ponzi, this hangs over the bidding process and could greatly impact third parties wanting to bid on these assets. And also, if it's a Ponzi, it would go back all the way to the beginning of when Celsius started, and you would look at net winners, net losers, and it would be a complete mess because we are dealing with cryptocurrency, which changes. There has not been a Ponzi declaration in a crypto company like this, so this is all uncharted territory. The bankruptcy code has never addressed questions like, let's say you deposited one Bitcoin 2 years ago at $10,000, but then you withdrew it 2 years later at $60,000. Are you a winner or a loser in this situation? David Adler was also surprised that the judge asked Celsius on November 15th, the next time they're in court, what, if any, business are they actually conducting? The judge apparently asked for an update in the hearing yesterday, but Celsius had no update. So the judge asked repeatedly what business they're doing right now, and David Adler says that is very unusual for a judge to press that question so strongly. David Adler said all of this could be moved to a Chapter 11 trustee or a Chapter 7 just because the fees for these lawyers are racking up and they are getting so high. The judge apparently was frustrated with all these pro se motions. These are individual creditors like yourself. And the judge is pissed off that Kirkland is not actually addressing these motions head on. And the judge ultimately wants to clarify who owns these assets. And this is ridiculous that it's been this long and we still don't have an answer to these things, because who owns the asset? Is it us or is it the estate? This clarification needs to be there before there is a sale of assets. So Simon Dixon asked David, could there be an accidental Ponzi? Kind of like Celsius started out with good intentions, which I believe they did, and then things got a little bit possibly Ponzi-ish down the road, potentially, right? And David Adler did say that, yes, this could be a thing, but he doesn't know whether or not this would affect the judgment of it entirely being a Ponzi. David also said that if this case was appointed a Chapter 11 trustee or converted to a Chapter 7, he said that this would be very embarrassing to Kirkland. So Kirkland does not want this to go to a Chapter 7. That would look bad on their firm, which is good because, as I'll get to later, a Chapter 7 would be devastating for all of us, and it would not be good. Basically, if this is deemed a Ponzi, you would go all the way back to like 2017, 2018, whenever this started, and you would look at people's net winnings. So whatever they put in is what they would hopefully get out. Anything that you made, so any yield, any weekly returns or whatever, those would most likely be clawed back, but it would go all the way back to the beginning. He mentions that with Madoff, I think it's been going on for 14 years and they are still litigating this stuff. So this is, again, really not what we want to happen, and I'll cover at the end what Simon thinks we should do and where we should go from here and how to avoid this. David Adler also said that a Ponzi would destroy the value of the customer base. Obviously, no one would keep their money with a newco if clawbacks happened. Definitely clawbacks going all the way back to 2018. That would be completely over. And David Adler said he did not like, again, that the word Ponzi was just said so often throughout this hearing. And if you don't know who David Adler is, he is the lawyer representing the loans ad hoc, but he has been very, very vocal and very informative throughout this entire process. So he says that there is no way that Celsius 2.0 can maximize value. He says there is too much taint, and I guess that is actually a legal term, not what we used to say in middle school. There's too much taint on Celsius, and the regulators and governmental agencies wouldn't go away in a Celsius 2.0. So basically, if there is governmental prosecution from the SEC or from the Texas State Security Board or whatever, if there was a Celsius 2.0, it would not just say, hey, new company, you can't litigate against us. It would still be lingering. David Adler says that Celsius needs to be sold, and there must be a plan for the assets that are not sold for example, like claims against Alex Mashinsky. And Simon Dixon has talked about that, where in his plan, he could make it where any future litigations would come back to the estate, and essentially we would still get that money as creditors, but we could get out of this Chapter 11 and we could move on with our lives. Simon Dixon says there would be a lot more bidders if they knew Celsius was not going to reorg, and the UCC should tell us if there will be a reorganization or not. There is just a lack of clarity, and that's what I was hearing a lot in this recap. Essentially, if the UCC said that Celsius is not going to present a plan for a reorganization, then everyone can unite around something like Simon's plan or another plan in the community. There wouldn't be this infighting about, well, Celsius still may present a plan, therefore we have to wait until they do it. So more about David Adler. He was just annoyed at today's hearing. He said they talked about all these things that are just not that important. Like, I believe they rejected KERP, that key employment and retention plans. They talked about the scope of the examiner, but they didn't talk about the most important things, which are going to be like who owns the crypto, the individuals or the estate. They didn't talk about collateral or earn. David Adler also says that when the proof of claim form comes out, he says it can be kind of complicated because even though they may say they have the right amount of crypto for you, you can still claim other things, like he says fraudulent misrepresentation or a breach of fiduciary duty. And even Simon was like, this is not good. Like the fact that claims are going to get more confusing possibly. So let me head right here to Twitter, talk about what Simon said. They must win the bid, either Simon or someone like Simon, before Celsius is classified a Ponzi in court. He says no more messing around. And this was really the energy from David Adler and Simon Dixon. I mean, there is no more time to mess around right now. We are in a very serious point right now. So let me just read what he said. He says, hard talk. I turned my life upside down to get best results for creditors. The bid is the process to try to make creditors whole, in my honest opinion. He then says, love or hate me, creditors have my full support and everything I've got until this bid is complete. If we don't win the bid, our destiny is in the hands of somebody else. Next hurdle, and this is very important, next hurdle is raising capital to win and execute. Now, what Simon Dixon said in this Twitter Spaces was that money talks. So Simon is going to be doing a funding round with Bank to the Future, basically raising, hopefully, I think he said hundreds of millions of dollars, because he needs to beat every other bidder. And again, we need to get a bid that is approved before this could be deemed a Ponzi. That is the goal right now, and that is what Simon is focused on. We will know in 2022 who gets 100% of coins back or haircuts like others. He says the bid likely leads to us receiving 40 to 50% of our coins back, depending on market conditions and ad hoc group decisions. On top of that, we will likely receive either an additional 10 to 20% from cash bids from sales of illiquid assets in the bear market, or we get exposure to illiquid assets. So what does he mean by that? 40-50% is what Celsius has right now in liquid coins that they could return to us. He says maybe 10 to 20% more when we sell the illiquid assets like mining, like GK8. So that is like a 40, 50, 60, maybe even 70% return of our coins, which honestly is better than I thought. So we will see what happens. He says either they get sold or we get equity with a chance to be made whole in the future. If we get exposure, we have a chance of full recovery and a vote to ensure we like the plan. If we get cash, we lock in our haircut with no vote and move on or lobby to the UCC to change the outcome. He says exposure could come in two ways: a fund that aims to go public with a private equity secondary market while we wait for better conditions, or a reverse merger into a distressed public company like Core Scientific, as Celsius likely ends up with 23% of Core after bankruptcy. So basically two different ways to do it. We could have a part of Core Scientific, or what Simon talked about in that 7-part video series, we would essentially have a fund where we would have equity, and then we would want to go public with it in the future. But he does say here that the downside, the fund or reverse merger, is subject to market forces. World War III, hyperinflation could crash the NASDAQ for a few years, or Bitcoin could stay in a bear market or sideways market, and electricity prices could kill U.S. mining. So this is a high-risk play, because if the next decade of Bitcoin, of NASDAQ, of tech stocks, of everything is just a sideways market, that wouldn't be good if we had a fund. It may be better to sell it, but again, we don't know, and I believe that Bitcoin is going to have another bull market in, maybe 3 to 4 years or so. So personally, I would rather have equity than just sell everything. But he says on the upside, this could be like the Berkshire Hathaway of Bitcoin, with mining, staking, regulated crypto custody, securities and lending, private equity, insider clawbacks, and other legal claims. So that is the upside. This could be, again, the crypto version of Berkshire, which has a bunch of different companies inside of its umbrella, and we know how well Warren Buffett did over the last, 50 years. And finally, he says to create and verify your account with Bank to the Future in case you are accredited and you want to take part of this funding round, or he actually gets the approval for non-accredited US investors to invest as well, which he may. All right, guys, that is it for the video. This place is loud as hell, and I'm getting a lot of weird looks recording inside a public Starbucks, so I will end it here. Hope this was helpful, keeping you guys up to date. I am still very hopeful. The downside is if this goes into a Ponzi, that would be a nightmare. But if that does not happen, I am very hopeful. And right now, I am backing the biggest and fastest and most well-funded horse, which right now is Simon, because he has the network, he has the influence, he has the investors already to get a giant bid of hundreds of millions of dollars, hopefully, that can compete and that can win the bid. And then we can get out of Chapter 11. There wouldn't be any retail clawbacks. We would still get insider clawbacks down the road, and we can get on with our freaking lives, get some coins back, and get equity in a new co. All right, guys, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Till next time, talk with you soon, and bye for now.